Every conversation you've ever had with ChatGPT, Claude, or any other AI tool is sitting on a physical server in a physical building somewhere in the world right now. And that building is not in your house, it's not in your state, and it might not even be in your country. When you delete a conversation, it does not disappear. When you think your data is private, you mean private from other users, not from the company, not from the government where that server lives, and not from anyone who gains physical access to that facility. The cloud is just a lie. It's just someone else's computer, and they can read everything on it. So let's start with what data centers actually are, because this is the infrastructure layer that makes every other AI threat possible. We will not be addressing environmental impact today. That is a whole nother day. A data center is a physical facility, a building full of servers, networking equipment, cooling systems, and power infrastructure. When you use any cloud service or AI tool, your data is being stored and processed on servers inside one of these buildings. And these facilities can be massive. Some are the size of multiple football fields or relatively small regional operations. So here's how it works. Your data doesn't just exist in one place. For redundancy and performance, cloud providers replicate your data across multiple data centers in different geographical regions. That conversation you had with an AI, it might exist on servers in Virginia, Oregon, Ireland, and Singapore simultaneously. Each data center operates under the laws of the country it's physically located in. So if your data is replicated to a server in the EU, it's subject to GDPR. If it's in China, it's subject to Chinese data localization laws. If it's in the US, it's subject to Patriot Act provisions that allow warrantless government access. Data centers have security, but they're not fortresses. Employees, contractors, maintenance workers, and government agents with legal authority all have potential physical access to the servers containing your data. Administrative access is, even with encrypted data, people who run those data centers have that access. So end-to-end encryption doesn't protect against insider threats at the infrastructural level. And we know in recent history, in 2013, the Snowden case showed that the NSA was tapping directly into Google and Yahoo fiber optic cables. And this wasn't hacking, it was physical interception at the infrastructure layer. Companies didn't even know anything was happening until documents were leaked. And after the revelation, both companies encrypted their inter-data center traffic, but the pipelines can still be compromised. More recently, Microsoft admitted that Chinese hackers gained access to their cloud infrastructure through a stolen signing key, giving them access to email accounts across multiple government agencies. And this wasn't a user level breach, it was an infrastructure breach that compromised everything and everyone using those servers. So, some common misconceptions here. You think your data is encrypted, so they can't read it. And that's wrong. It's encrypted in transit and at rest, but the provider holds the decryption keys and they can access your data whenever they want or are compelled to by law. You think you only use US based services, but it's probably incomplete information. Even US-based companies replicate data internationally for performance and redundancy. So your data almost certainly exists in multiple countries simultaneously. You think tech companies fight government access requests, but you would be mistaken. They fight individual requests publicly and simultaneously operate under broad PRISM authorizations that allow bulk surveillance and being subject to secret programs like Muscular. I have no idea what the fuck this is. I will be linking all of this in show notes. The public legal battles coexist with extensive government access programs operating under different legal frameworks. You think data centers are secure from physical attacks, and they are, but that's overstated. Security may be good, but nation states, sophisticated criminals, and insider threats can and do gain physical access. We have a number of incidents where this has happened. And once somebody has gained physical access to a server, encryption is often meaningless. Now, here's the uncomfortable part. If you use any cloud servers or AI tools, your data is distributed across infrastructure you don't control, in locations you don't know, under legal jurisdictions that may not protect you. This affects everyone using cloud services, but especially people working with sensitive business information who think their corporate cloud is private. Healthcare providers using cloud AI tools who believe HIPAA compliance means their patient data is protected at the infrastructure layer. It doesn't. Activists and journalists in countries with authoritarian governments where data stored in international data centers can be accessed through legal cooperation agreements. Anyone with information that could be commercially valuable to the companies running the infrastructure. People subject to litigation or investigation where data can be subpoenaed from cloud providers without you even knowing. And you're already exposed because terms of service, when you agreed to use any cloud AI service, you granted the provider broad rights to access, analyze, and use your data. You have to read what you agreed to. It's always, we can access your data to improve services, comply with legal obligations, and protect our systems. And that covers nearly everything. Intelligence agencies don't need to hack US companies either. They just request the data from the international replica in a jurisdiction with weaker privacy laws. Your data in Ireland is subject to Irish legal protections, which is different from US protections. Cloud providers use third-party vendors for maintenance, security, monitoring, and operations. Each vendor relationship creates an additional access point to your data. You didn't consent to those third parties specifically, but they're built into the infrastructure. Finally, many AI providers explicitly state that they use your inputs to improve their models. You might be able to opt out, but you have to look for this information. And that means that your private conversations are being fed into training data sets, analyzed by researchers, and incorporated into the models other people are using. So the compounding effect here is that every service you use adds another data center relationship, another jurisdiction where your data exists, another set of administrators with access, and another legal framework that might compel disclosure. If you use Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Anthropic, OpenAI, Apple, and Dropbox, that's not 7 separate security contexts. It's dozens of data centers across multiple countries with hundreds of administrators who have technical access capabilities, plus contractors with varying levels of access to your infrastructure. And what makes this hard to detect is you'll never know when someone accessed your data at the infrastructure level because there's no notification when a system administrator views your files or when a government agent serves a legal demand. The access happens invisibly. So, What are the actual consequences when your data lives in infrastructure you don't control? Let's talk short term and long term. Short term, if you're working on anything sensitive, business strategy, competitive intelligence, product development, personal legal matters, health, political organizing, and you're using cloud AI tools, you've already shared it with all of your infrastructure providers. For businesses, this is espionage risk. Your competition can hire employees from cloud providers who have seen your data. Foreign intelligence services can legally request data stored in their jurisdictions. For individuals, this is the end of privacy in the traditional sense. Your therapy conversations with AI, your financial planning, your relationship problems, your political views, all of it exists in systems where administrators can read it, where AI researchers can analyze it for training, and where governments can subpoena it. Long-term data sovereignty is becoming a competitive advantage and a human rights issue. Companies and individuals who keep data on local infrastructure they control will have strategic advantages over those who outsource to the cloud. Countries with strong data localization laws can protect their citizens' information from foreign access, though. And the infrastructure layer is becoming a battleground for geopolitical power. Control over data centers means control over information, which means control over economies and populations. So, when data center jurisdiction matters, every cloud service decision becomes a question of which government do I want to have potential access to this information? US companies replicate to Europe for GDPR compliance, but that means EU governments can access the data, and so on, and so on, and so on. There are no safe choices, only trade-offs between which jurisdictions you trust the least. So let's talk about what you can actually do, because this is where systematic thinking diverges from security theater. Immediately, understand where your data physically exists. For every cloud service you use, look up where their data centers are located. And major providers have dozens of regions across multiple continents. It's going to be hard to find. It's going to take some work. Know which jurisdictions have legal access to your information. For sensitive work, don't use cloud AI for anything you wouldn't be comfortable with a data center administrator or the FBI reading. That means no confidential business information, no personal health details, no private conversations, no financial data, nothing that can be used against you. If it's genuinely sensitive information, it shouldn't touch infrastructure you don't physically control. And look for local processing alternatives. For AI assistance, you can use open source models like Llama, Mistral, Stable Diffusion without sending data to external servers. The quality isn't going to always be the same, and setup requires you to have some tech knowledge and some decent hardware. Many users are going to find this option impractical, but if your data security matters to you, then you can build your own infrastructure. For most people, the more realistic protection is don't use AI for sensitive work, period. If you must use cloud services, some providers offer data residency guarantees where you can specify that your data only exists in certain jurisdictions. This is going to cost you more and probably reduce your performance, but it'll limit your legal exposure to specific countries. For businesses handling EU citizen data, GDPR compliance often requires this anyways. Assess your jurisdictional risk. So Figure out where your data lives in relationship to the laws to which you are compliant. Understanding which jurisdictions have mutual legal assistance treaties and intelligence sharing agreements will also help you because it tells you where your data is vulnerable to government access. Finally, accept what you can't control, because if you put it in the cloud, it's not yours anymore, not in any meaningful sense. You can delete it from your account, but you can't delete it from the backups, the training data sets, or the governmental archives where it was copied during surveillance operations. The only real protection is never generating the data in cloud infrastructure in the first place. Honestly, the real skill isn't finding the most secure cloud provider. It's recognizing that the cloud is fundamentally insecure by design because you don't control the physical infrastructure. So that's why we start with the infrastructure layer in the AI protection program. Every other protection you build, encryption, authentication, privacy settings, it's meaningless if the data exists on servers you don't control in jurisdictions that can compel access. So we're going to give you frameworks for assessing infrastructure risk across your entire digital life. Not just AI tools, but everything that stores data remotely. Registration closes December 19th and the program starts January 5th. All of the information can be found in show notes, descriptions, wherever. If that's a little too much for you, the 2026 Workshop Pass starts in January with monthly workshops and systematic thinking about AI protection and infrastructure. That info is also in all of the places. So here's what I want you to remember from today. The cloud is just somebody else's computer in somebody else's building in somebody else's country, and they can read everything on it. That's it. It's that simple. So if you're a network member, the strategic implementation brief will be in the post for today. It's going to cover how to audit where your data actually lives, which jurisdictions you're exposed to, and when you should keep things local. Everyone else, there's descriptions and the links. You can't protect your infrastructure if you don't understand it. So you got to start by knowing where your data actually is. See y'all next time.